think a lawyer bringing up the issue of choices getting so merged has not even merit the term confusion. And the results speaking from within that merged state to say that if this were to be done again, I'll do this again, is where I thought for us as students of a particular model of psychotherapy, these processes gain a certain ground. So whereas we might appear as too distant from mental health law and acts, we try to receive these dilemmas that for actions dogging our lives perpetuate us. Then try to see what are the ways to sort of look at various sides in that. So the panel, I'm sure, is awaiting eagerly the questions that you have, and you will fling questions one after another in such a large group. And the chairperson also has his own material to give you. So what would you suggest? Not one person can be authorized to take the decision, right?
So we have time.
In how much time?
We have time.
We have time? Okay. How would you prefer? Would you prefer that we raise questions first for the next 15-20 minutes and then I sort of share a few things with you?
You share.
Are people feeling very warm, or are they simply delighted to be here in close packs? Because I believe psychology classes are dwindling in numbers, so it's a nice feeling to have. I don't think they don't play numbers.
So very warm.
Very warm, but not very hot. Okay.
120 people.
Okay, quickly. I think since time is short, please retain your questions for different panelists. My task is to recall what may happen in a clinic, in a psychotherapy setting, and that too at this stage of my life to look at where the clinician has begun to wander, like a neurological. And while wandering, the clinician can possibly begin to wonder, why does clinic not happen outside right here? Why is clinic not happening here? That's a kind of set of orientations that I have begun to get drawn to. Which is why after each speaker I try to sum it up, even though I might have removed certain questions that people may have in mind. Because I think I'm touching an aspiration with the help of my colleagues and the students who are coming to take this unusual course, that the clinical is very much around, and is so much around and surrounding us that to speak from a language there, you often get mistaken as though you are listening. But if each of the panel members has shared his or her excitement in ways that I could hear, and I'm sure some of you could also hear, then the clinic is around. Because a clinician never ceases to be a clinician, unfortunately. Even in dreaming these days, he's there. So when he loses dreams, he's a patient. When he receives dreams, he's a clinician. When he wants to give lectures on certain things, he's a theoretician. I don't know. Only when he can go mad again does he deserve to be somewhere outside this. But maybe when he's mad again, he can sort of renew a certain way of thinking. So, first radical thought that Isha gave us was, when you are alone, you can't be in. So the material that I'll show you should illustrate that. But when you are alone, what is it that happens with you, by which it can be said with a certain conviction? All convictions are open to ambivalences, so please accept it. But yes, the conviction must for a while make you jump into the frame and say, wow, Pratiksha, thank you so much. That when you are all by yourself, you cannot be in. With the signs, you can. But she's going to change us. That's the point. But still, the material I would like to use. I would also like to show you that material, the bully and the timid coming together in the same character. But what do the bully and the timid do to each other? And what is the content of the bully and the timid? Is where you never know what sparked off the bulliness in that, but you learn to see how the timidness is acquiring a voice, and how the bully is still staring vacuously as to how he has managed to do the damage and doesn't know how to restore. So the bully and the timid also must appear in the clinic as more together than what in our manner of speaking and talking, we can't always manage to hold it together. It's a difficult thing, I admit. It's taken years for somebody to, for instance, when I was very young, like the age of some of them, people will say analysis means the first statement that you're given in the session. The validity of a statement that survives all the struggles of life and the truth in that. Who makes that must be the core of law, to be able to reach somewhere where something sustains for all the struggles. Like the brother is in the hospital in a schizophrenic state, and you are asking us to join him imaginatively. So there must be a truth beyond just you and the way you advertise a certain need of community. So where? So I wonder, what is this statement like? How can things be so long lasting? So long lasting. I used to think like raw young minds must think that the statement must remain like this, without realizing that each word drops meanings, and as in how you begin to be on the sahil, on the kinara of a water body, you actually begin to see that waves in the water body make you see a different relationship with the language. So the same language becomes musical. So when Prateeksha ji said, "Unko gana sunaiye," unhone kaha unka gana sunne ka man na ho, to forgetting that even a smile can be music. The smile was all along giving you difficult thoughts, and yet you say, think of something more that we don't have at the moment. That is music, I feel. Music is to evolve with hope while we are losing. We are at the end of reaching a language or a set of thinking. We say we can't, but still we say with the smile. The smile seems authentic. To bully, the timid, the music, whose choice is it? And do I have a magic wand? I think I have a magic wand. But I think when I say I have a magic wand, the magic wand isn't something which is classic. Anything which has survived. That's where, when Hanish told me the theme first, which is of suffering and struggling, I said, we've forgotten a few things. She said, yeah, we've forgotten. And then in our own ingenious way, she brought in living. So something that survives must have the imagination to go back to suffering, to go back to its own state, vis-a-vis the suffering then and now, and in the process, hopefully, make someone else hope that I am living, I am no longer surviving. And I think this idiom in that sense goes on. Like you said, that law is always evolving. Similarly, this consciousness is always evolving. So when I say I have the magic wand is in the form of a song taken from a film which has seen the analysis of our society cast repeatedly in themes, the theme of Devdas. That at one point one of my dear students said that maybe we should begin thinking in place of Oedipus complex when there is a Devdas complex. So classical meeting the modern consciousness is where one should look for a magic wand, and I'm sure we will find the magic wand, but you have to see it with the eyes of someone who is aging, someone who is categorical, someone who is not willing to give you way, sort of pushing aside. Magic is not easy to arrive at. You have to push people aside. And that's where I would just request Priya to play this song from a film called Devdas by Dilip Kumar, not Shah Rukh Khan, sorry. But I'll ask you to remember that Shah Rukh Khan in his own admission says that he copies Dilip. In this song, please don't watch what I say you to watch, but watch. If you were to hear me, I will say watch for the way this man looks for what was suffering, who caused it, is it close to me, has it become invisible, is it only in my heart or my mind, or is it in the rifle that I am holding, or is it in the water body? Yeah, distract me. Or is it in the cosmos? This song is not just about a character, this song is also about the character relating with nature, relating with the tree, relating with his mehbooba, and relating with letters, and also the lyrics of it. so much has come to me. So I only hope that some of it also comes to you. But I'm quite sure that the song will arrest you. So don't necessarily wait for things to happen right now. But envy me because I got all. Thank you. Can we have the song?
5 minutes.
It's a 3-minute song, not more.
It will take 5 minutes to decide.
5 minutes and change like
बहुत मुश्किल Can you switch off the lights for me? My guru in this matter is none other than Anup sir's very close, Ashish Rajadesh. Way back in Bangalore, he played a song. कौन सा था? So this song is inviting you in the present one, but the backdrop is to actually get to the lover. So far removed from that diagnostic categories that I can't tell you. I'm so sorry, but this is what happens in the clinic. In the clinic, the diagnostic categories are not lost, but they are laced with love, and you begin to see the human component. And in the human component, then there are the lyrics, then you begin to wonder, how was a timeless lyric point? And how did the character with the consummate artistry manage to reduce those small glances to tell you how far can suffering go even as you survive?
Can you?
क्या हुआ भाई? There is one more thought till the song comes. 2 days back, this song has a theme about meeting a friend, and we don't only think of meeting a friend in terms of the opposite sex these days. So 2 days back, Honey came to me and said, "We're not being able to get in touch with Amit, saying, do you have his number?" I said, "Yeah, I have his number." I had not contacted him. I had not contacted him for such a long time. We had met a few years back in that workshop, and somehow I had a sense that if I call him, since I called him, I said, "I mean, this is a show." No, first I sent a message. I said, "When can I talk to you?" Prompt came the message. I said, in fact, he called, and both of us spoke, and I said, "I mean, this is." I was stumbling, stammering, because I didn't know how to get in to see that for the last so many days we have been planning this thing. I don't know who all have said no. He might think, "Ab bula rahe hain mujhko." But the moment I said that this is what we need you for, he didn't even ask me kitne se kitne baje tak mere ko rehna hoga. He kept imagining that I kept imagining he'd say, "इतना नहीं रुक पाऊंगा मैं, बहुत बिजी हूँ यार, समझते हो मैं ऐसे कैसे?" Nothing of the kind. These days, when I've aged this much, I've begun to see that there is a certain spirituality to these processes. That when you reach out to somebody, you know what I try to say? No? You lose words. You lose words in certain moments, and that's where the classical compositions help us see in a very brief set of words that living is a complex task, either divinely aided or pursued with a scientific rigor, which as a unit we are trying to evolve here, but we are way behind. This panel is one such effort, to have a lawyer, a psychiatrist on the roll, a musician, and someone who has the way he has expressed and articulated the suffering of his brother and himself. And we have many silent witnesses who haven't spoken. I don't think I'm giving the chance to speak. I'm speaking so much. I'm just filling the time also for you. I hope I'm doing it well. There is a certain lyricality to the song. If the song doesn't come in 1 minute, I might start singing. I'll sing later on at 5:30. But at the moment, I want you to not listen to the song as much as to see this man's movement. Because remember, in the clinic, we have both the possibilities. We have face-to-face work, and we have people on the couch, so that we only hear the voice. This is a good blend of both. You can choose to be an analyst, you can choose to be a dynamic therapist. Only if the song comes here.
May I want to pitch in with a little something? Can she sing instead?
Yeah. Before that, can I say something?
Sure, sure.
They always say that lawyers always seem to get the best end of the deal for themselves. So I actually thought, since this has to come on, I'd take 1 more minute and share a thought with you. Yeah. The thought is that we just talked about the conflict in the law in terms of the different aspirations of different stakeholders and how the actions of one stakeholder would affect another, and how the law has to deal with all of them. I actually wanted to put this into a canvas for you, because the thought has to not just remain in isolation. What we have to understand is that one of the bedrocks of law is equality. So it's equality before the law and equal protection of the law. Essentially, it means that people will be given the same kind of protection and they will carry the same kind of rights where the law is concerned. Yeah? So therefore, it's not possible to have laws which are individualistic in nature. And yet we are evolving towards a society which more and more is looking at and celebrating differences. So I also want you to think about how when you approach the law, how you would look at the dilemmas that are presented within the law, because it's by its very nature sort of one shoe fits all, and we keep trying to take little sort of grabs at the pie and say, no, let's pull this bit out and let's make this into a special law for certain special people. But again, it's a class of people. It cannot be individualistic.
Okay, I have one more invitation to invite you all to. There is something called the DX Summit, which is a part of, it's an online platform for rethinking mental health. And everybody can contribute to that discourse and dialogue. And it has people working in mental health from the globe all over represented, and there are different kind of voices. It's I don't have a link to it right now, but I have an artist page on Facebook called Sabapratisha, and there's a DX Summit link over there. So DX Summit, if you can just reach out, you'll see many kinds of voices talking to different things on mental health. And this is a global network, so you're all welcome to be a part of that. I thought I'd invite you.
Thank you. What is missing now? The audio is missing. This is a real piece, huh? There is a request that in case the song doesn't come in the next 20 minutes, you must start the discussion after 20 minutes. Keep your questions alive. I think we may have to eventually go there.
See the songs. See the songs.
Thanks for now we can have the questions. They say it's a sin to.
Can I start by asking how did you find this song? I'm very interested to know. Because I think we inhabit different mind spaces when it comes to engaging with music and media, and I have actually had these discourses with my nephews, with my children, and oftentimes I find that they're completely not being able to connect to what we feel is the most soulful, most kind of, eternal and, kind of a piece which will age forever, and it ages so well. And it doesn't quite connect like that with generations of today. And I wanted to know, did it get to you? What did it do to you?
I feel I have to watch the entire movie, like just this much.
I haven't watched this movie actually, sorry. But I can connect to it straight away. Because I've seen movies like these and I can, connect to sensibilities of the way things and emotions and was portrayed to us, I think, yeah.
I think now that he has become a footballer with me, part of the same he's passed on something to me. Quickly say there are 5 thoughts about this song.
Yeah.
Please, the ones who want to watch it must watch it again. The first thought is that the beloved emerges with a letter, and she's as if going into the back of the mind of the character. She's lisping something. Then he's with his back is towards us. So things are going onto the back, since we're talking about the back of the mind and the front of the mind. And he has a rifle there, and he's, like both of you brought on the side, he's on the side of this thing. The point when he gets up is the point where he is coming to a hole in a tree, and he's bringing his rifle there, and he caresses the bark of the branch. Then he goes to the side, allow us to look at the Vyakulta. The Vyakulta which he can't keep inside. The rifle for me is showing the bully act that he has done, and Devdas, as we know, was forced by his father to give up on his love and to go wherever he could go. So the violence is seething in him. The rifle is an act of that. He's sitting at the lake side, the pond side, whatever, and there is a weather which is saying that there will be downpour, but he just doesn't know how to deal with it. It's at this point that he moves aside and allows, the viewer is now allowed to sort of have a look at the nature before we can come to what he is going through. So the scale has been enlarged. It's not just one actor, but a lot that happens to all of us in that. It's at this point that he's shown doing something like this, which is to say, you can't feel the tear. You can feel the cheeks of the movement, you can feel the eyes. And then subsequently, the last shot we couldn't see is that in the last shot the woman appears again. The woman now goes and leans her head against a pillar. For me, it's a complete musical representation of a very profound paper by Freud called Mourning and Melancholy. It completes the cycle in terms of the inner processes that a person goes through before we can say that he has started to live. Living, recalling the beloved and her loss as well as my own loss together, so that the processes of bully and timidness can now come closer. The father can possibly rob me in terms of what happened outside, but internally I have the whole nature with me, is where I thought this song has a classical sense. Thank you. Please, the questions are I'm sorry I've taken a far longer time. I thought as a chairperson I should give minimal time, so I'll shut up now. Just quickly turn to the other panelists, not to me.
There's a question there.
Yeah. Amit Sen, you spoke about how you cure your own problem of ADHD, right? All by yourself.
I haven't actually.
So I have a good wife. I'm assuming at the point of discovery of it, you wouldn't have understood it completely.
Sorry, what?
Discovery of the problem.
That was when you came to diagnosis.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm a student of literature, and my understanding of neurosis, psychosis, or any mental problem of brain has been rather experiential. Okay, and here comes my question. So how do you think one can look within and come over one's own created underground, self-created underground, the problems that we came into?
Right. That's a very broad and deep question.
And that's it, from the community healing part of the subject.
I think the ability. So being a psychiatrist, I sometimes look at it from not just the way you put it in terms of experience and literature, because there's a lot about this in literature, isn't there? But also in terms of parts of the brain, right? So let me try and explain how I understand it. As we grow up as children, there is one part of the brain which is connected to the outside world and is responding emotionally. Emotionally, then socially, then cognitively. Yeah, there are different parts of the brain that do it. And a lot of the times, as we grow up or are growing up, our responses in terms of our moods and feelings are to do with what's happening outside or perhaps even inside our mind. Yeah. As we grow up, there is an ability that we develop to filter some of this and also modulate and give meaning to our experiences. And that comes from the thinking mind, right? And the reflective mind. Now, in different cultures and in different families, there is an atmosphere of one kind or the other. I mean, broadly speaking. So, you're either allowed to reflect, you're allowed to think about your feelings, talk about your feelings, or they may be negated, they may be brushed aside, they may be not heard at all, right? And partly due to that, and partly also due to the wiring and the temperament of the person, we begin to understand these things better and better. And as we do, there are connections that form in our mind between two parts of the brain. Here, I'm talking about two parts which are predominantly the limbic system, which is to do with feelings and impulses. And I'm talking about the prefrontal lobes. Are you familiar with this? I know you're from literature, but yeah? If
yeah, but I did view neuroscience.
All right. So, So, when we keep engaging with the outside world and internalize our experiences and then mull over it and use our prefrontal lobes, we are actually orchestrating a lot of this. And we are getting into a mind space which would be, perhaps for a better word, called mindfulness, to be able to understand what's going on. Now, you may not be able to resolve everything as a result, but what you can be as you grow up, and the growing up process is, I think, as long as you live. It's a constant process of being able to understand what's going on, accepting a lot of that, watching a lot of that, perhaps resolving it in some ways. Yeah, but it's a journey. It's a journey that you have to make, and I think the earlier you start, the better off you are to be in. I wouldn't say control, but yes, more awareness and perhaps a degree of control of your own self. Certainly not the environment, but definitely your own self. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So it's I was very convinced myself.
Just sorry, I just want to add to that. Insofar as you have to make sense of any experience for yourself, as a student of literature, we have to do it in language. To make sense of it, to rationalize it, to make a narrative. It has to happen in language. And Wittgenstein has a very famous maxim: there is no such thing as private language. Language is a public phenomena. So insofar as you have to make sense of it in language, if you have people with whom you can kind of, sometimes it's, language is a bizarre thing. The fact that we speak words which we take for granted, which other people understand, is just actually astounding if you look at the leaps that are happening there. So insofar as you have certain kind of pegs in your milieu and the people who are willing to help you navigate that, I think you have a better chance of making sense of this experience rather than on your own, totally. I mean, there's something to be said for reflective thought, but I want to add that. Yeah.
Well, that's very well put. I think the meaningfulness and the narrative of the story that you read about your own life is absolutely vital to be able to give you that space and the feeling of security and safety and stability to be able to negotiate with the unpredictability of life and the chaotic nature of life. It is indeed like that, isn't it? And if you can hold that together in your mind through your narrative, then definitely you're on your way.
Also for your wife.
Yes.
Yeah, bless you.
I was wondering, for understanding, what if the first
What is the third trajectory? Yeah.
What if the third trajectory of Sahil manifested in the form of emotional masochism?
Emotional?
Masochism.
Okay. What if? I suppose your question is that would we do something about it?
What sort of resolution can come out?
Or what kind of resolution?
And what may happen to that person as an individual?
Right.
And what sort of resolution can come out?
Right. So I suppose in some ways, and I don't, struggle with some of the internal processes or the names that are given to it, but I suspect you're talking about somebody who's interjecting the content or the experiences that they're having, and indeed then the outcome would be starting from a person who has a depressed personality with a lot of self-pity and brewing and mulling and over it and have relationships which are also then will sort of fulfill some of those emotional needs, or it could also lead to repeated depression perhaps, which is what I was suggesting. So again, I think when the manifestation, so obviously the manifestation could be many. It could be somebody who's wallowing in her own self-pity and carrying on with life, having different relationships one after the other, and somehow blundering through life. But on the other hand, it could lead to something much more dramatic, which affects not only him but other people. And it's then that this system unfortunately starts responding. A lot of the times people go through their own experiences, but as long as they're silent, just as in a classroom when there are silent timid children who are suffering who never get noticed, similarly people in the wider world also don't get noticed if they're not making a huge hue and cry. So if they did that through, let's say, a suicidal attempt or maybe huge mood swings in a relationship, etc., or if that's not breaking the family up, then maybe it can go unnoticed. But if it does, begin to affect some of the system, somebody may take notice. On the other hand, Sahil might also develop certain resources within to be able to understand what's going on and want to break free. So that is indeed another option, and we can never take that away from anybody. And that obviously would be a positive step towards resolving a lot of things that have happened in his life and be able to then be able to make different choices then.
A number of hands raised, and since we are first giving lots of time, don't worry now. We have a good 20 minutes. Back, please. Yeah. Can you be a little louder? My question is for Pradeesha, ma'am.
Yes. So now you use the word alone. What's the word responsibility? Because I was thinking what my maid. I mean, could she afford to suffer like the way you did? I mean, your family could afford you for paying your bills for 15 years. So I was thinking like, are these amniotic chochine that we refer to, and I'm not saying that your suffering was not great, but can a large part of society and a large part of humankind, can even suffer in such ways? And
you know what? It's a good question, because I also asked myself this: that had I been a person with any less amount of resources, how could this recovery have happened? And so I think the answer is that whatever we have is what we play with. And a lot is nobody has infinite choices, and I didn't have a lot of money. My parents have just been very simple, ordinary college teachers, and we've had a very hard life. And to the extent that all my relatives, my family was completely socially ostracized in a way, and even if there were cases where they would be invited or could be invited legitimately, they would not want to go and deal with all sorts of queries about what their daughter is doing. And I've been through multiple marriages. I've come back home, so not only was there a question mark about, this is that girl, they used to always talk about, she was so bright, she had to do something, ab kya ho gaya, So my grandmother, everybody, I mean my whole family has been through so much suffering that we have a park which is as close as this young boy is sitting there, as close to my house, okay? My grandma would go and they'd say, oh, Preeti, fir wapas aa gayi hai, I was married second time back home. And I don't know if it was about me getting mentally ill or was it the added stigma of a woman back home into. So my family has really suffered. So it's not about what resources my family had. We didn't have any resources actually. We didn't have. I mean, it was just that I was eating roti in my house with my family. I was not doing anything. It's all looking very nice now, with so many years. And I've struggled and studied and I don't know what all I've put myself through. But it's been a huge, huge thing. And I was not rolling in wealth. I still am not. I have a very hard life. I work very hard from morning till evening. I study more than you people would be studying because I am perhaps not even one of the 5 people in this country who are survivor researchers in mental health. So I want to stake the claim that I'm a serious person and I'm a possibility. You all are on one side of the spectrum and I'm on the other side.
In that sense, you're saying this is the being alone for.
Yes, I'm alone on every forum. When I was in college, I was.
Here you're not alone. You can't say.
I'm just saying, look, here of course I'm sharing with kindred souls who understand a lot of the issues, But what happens is, when I was in college and I left in third year of college, or just like that, because I had my psychosis then. After that, nobody ever found out in LSR what happened to Pratiksha. She's dead and gone forever. Nobody ever knew.
I think that's where his question is, the responsibility of reaching a progress is then on us.
Yes. How you negotiate through that solitude, that loneliness, and believe me, I've been very suicidal. And just at the point where I thought, I am just about to do that, I thought, let me just try with a dog. Maybe a dog would be good because I was basically someone very relationship oriented and those relationships were not working out with human beings. And everybody has a need to be loved and loved. And I love to be with plants, I love humans, So if that is not happening with a significant other, because I have my diagnosis much before my marriage, I thought marriage is going to take care of my suffering by someone who's going to understand my suffering and maybe partake of it, help me lessen it. Instead, it got amplified in marriage, And I'm back home once, twice, so it's a huge thing. And we didn't have any resources, by the way, so don't get me wrong there, And again, I was back to my own house in Faridabad. I shifted alone, so I had a huge wall, an ocean of solitude to deal with. I had nobody but myself, and I could cherish and value the people who would come to my home. I would look at their feet. I wrote poetry about somebody's feet. I would look at. I said, "Wow, this is some presence in my life." I could deepen my bonds with every single thing. I healed every aspect of my life. Very mindfully, very acknowledging every little thing, every plant that grew in my home. It would die, I would say, "Oh God, why you died? You didn't like the soil in this house, what happened? You didn't like my songs?" So much. And my songs therefore grew out of my anguish. It was not about singing songs from films. I don't sing. I don't even listen to any music. My music is all that comes from within me. It is an expression of my own. So it's very difficult, my dear. And everybody has to find their own pathway at the end of it. But yes, we have resources, we have choices, and we have systems that we can access if we know how to. That's it.
I think there's also there's an important need to kind of just break down this correlation that if you are if you're of an upper class, that you will have more psychological resources to deal with a psychosocial disability or distress. Yes, you might have more material resources, but if you see all the studies, there's a reason why you have poorer prognosis in Western countries, in populations that are more affluent, than in poorer countries. And I was trying to kind of indicate to this that. Even though our rights-based approach comes from a very individual-oriented worldview, the same worldview on the other end is what it's doing is actually eviscerating psychological resources of communities by disbanding them and actually making us more vulnerable to psychosocial distress. So let's not be, let's not say that they're poor and therefore they have less psychological resources. In fact, if you see the work that Bapu Trust has done in Pune, Bhargavi's work basically goes on to show that communities from the lower income background actually are much more resilient in face of psychosocial distress. I mean, there's a huge sort of movement underway to rehabilitate even spiritual and religious resources, because they're such an integral part of the Indian milieu. After what happened in Irvada in 2001, when people basically died in this religious center, and the Supreme Court passed an order saying we don't need any of these religious centers, we don't need any kind of communal support for psychosocial distress that's related to religion. We'll only have proper psychologists and psychiatrists, medically certified professionals dealing with it. I think that's a regressive step in some sort of way, because we are destroying what is already there that we know works, to some extent at least.
And I must add one more thing here. I've seen that the so-called affluent and the rich, they hide their mentally ill. I don't know if you know this thing. This is my study, and I interact with so many people all over the world. I know that it's very convenient for them to just shut them out, or maybe put them in an asylum or do whatever it is. But with the poorer lot, let's say, you are let loose in society, and then you have to negotiate with the world on your own terms, whatever. So you automatically develop the strength and the ability. You're a little more resilient, I feel, if you are not so financially, endowed, or you have all those resources at your disposal. I don't think it necessarily helps in any way, having more money.
Since we have received many questions, and
I actually just want to add a point note on Iravati, because I actually interviewed a lot of the families of the victims in Iravati, and what was interesting was exactly what you were talking about. It happened as a result of a breakdown in the community system, because the testimonies that came out were actually what is happening in the Supreme Court seems completely surreal as compared to what the actual experiences were. There were families who said, we tried, we had no option. I was not getting a house on rent. Somebody said, my wife was getting old. We could not, he was getting violent. I could not risk leaving him behind. We didn't have another caregiver. Somebody said, my boss gave me an ultimatum and said, we've put up with this a lot, but now it's a 9-to-5 job. You cannot take off in the middle. And he had other family commitments, other people to support. And I think the most shocking comment came, and I think I got it right because some of it was in translation. I wasn't able to communicate because the languages were different. But one of the most shocking comments that came across was that one person said to me, he said, Madam, we take our mentally ill to Iravati because there is a tradition of caring for people there. And actually it's not just people. If you go to Iravati, you will see a lot of people, and you will see a lot of, because people still go there, they still leave their mentally ill, and you will see a lot of dogs, because people are very kind to dogs. They're just kind to, he said the difference between what happened before the fire and what's happening today is that before the fire, the human beings in Iravati had a shelter. Even this asylum where the fire broke out, essentially, the people were chained because, according to these people, were chained because they had a tendency to run away, and these people did not have sufficient resources to actually keep them and go and find them. And so they said that they would chain them for certain length of time or whatever, just to keep them. But they were physically looking after them. It's a complete human rights abuse. But I just want you to place it in the context of the community failure that landed this situation, And they said today in Iravati, both the humans and the dogs are on the streets. There's no shelter, there's no food, there's no caring. It's everybody on the streets all together. And that's the commentary of Iravati, failure of the community system.
Dr. Sen, I would like to ask you one thing. I am with my brother. He is suffering from OCD and mental retardation. So in your institution, how do you get it?
नंबर पे शेड्यूल है.
Yeah, I mean, there are many things that we do. We do an assessment too. So there is no formula for somebody. There's no formula. So again, I think it's important to understand in the context of what psychiatry does and if that's all right or not, and whether and what it should do. So again, if I'm considering myself slotted in the third trajectory of Sahil, then I would say that it's my responsibility to address individual differences even within that working system, in a clinical system, right? So which means that if your brother comes to our service, we will actually evaluate him thoroughly to be able to see what his needs are now. And that could involve so many different things. It could be needs to do with medication, to do with therapy, with working with the family, with education, with rehabilitation, all of that. So I don't think I can give you a straight answer till we are able to go forward. Yeah.
Maybe we'll have 3 more questions now because the tea is waiting. We can continue to talk there with the panelists.
I wanted to ask Sabha a question. Ma'am?
Sorry? Can you wave your hand? Okay.
Yeah. You talked about autoethnography.
Autoethnography.
Yeah. That seems interesting. And a question that came to my mind was about bias.
Well,
Bias.
yes.
Yeah. So, how was your guide able to help you?
No, I don't have any guides, by the way. Let me tell you that. I don't work, as in I'm not guided by anybody. It's a very instinctive process. They overall review my work. When they read, chalo, ye article likha hai, 5,000 words. It's going through a journal. I just send it for review. See, bias, one of my articles has just got accepted for publication in the Canadian Journal of Music Therapy. It's called Making Song, Making Sanity, which I talk about my recovery musically in the context of Kabir's poetry. So they asked me the question that how do you guard against bias? The reviewer sent me comments back. And what happens is any qualitative research, bias is automatically inbuilt because the choice of the question is the bias itself, first of all. So we will go with the assumption that the bias is inbuilt, but because when you look at a phenomenon, then you are bringing in converging evidences from many sides to say that, okay, I'm aware of this, I'm doing this, doing this. So bias, anything, you are studying psychology, you have a bias. So we just guard like that and we say, okay, this is the truth. That's how it is.
So that was just a paper for PhD?
Sorry?
That was a paper?
Nobody took me for PhD, remember? So I'm going to be writing books after books, that's how it is.
Keep your interest in this question alive. This is also a question that we can take up in SHF, but do talk to her because she has the capacity, special responsibility of aloneness. So you need to I think 2 more questions now. One, that gentleman has worked a lot for organizing the thing, so we should ask him.
He didn't have a voice.
It's actually to Roma ma'am, and not just to her, but this mental health care bill is supporting that we're going to politically correct involuntary admission to supported admission. In terms of judicial review committee would review someone's case if, for example, there's a user who does not want to get admitted, but the family and the psychiatrist as well sees that there is a need for the person to be admitted. So how would you say that is a good move or is it a bad move? What is your view on that?
From the user's point of view, because you are alone and there's a whole system out there. So in the user community, I mean, there's a whole lot of mental health activists. I'm part of that network. I don't articulate that much yet, but we are all very threatened by that. I'm not there technically, but there are many people who are out there, and they stand the possibility that their family can say, okay, it's so to bando, yeah, whatever, take it to the hospital, ECT, anything can happen. So we are very much against the whole thing, but I'm sure she has a very valid perspective on what she's saying. So there's still a new
First of all, I do have to clarify that in the mental health care bill, very astoundingly, ECT is prescribed. It's prescribed for adults. Strangely, it's not prescribed for minors. So that's something we're still dealing with. Why it's like that, I still haven't understood. As far as involuntary commitment is concerned, I have to share with you that if we look at how, can I just do away with this mic? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so in the UK actually they brought in a change in the law which kind of did away completely with involuntary commitment. They said you could only be taken in with the consent, but they had to retract that, and they've actually had to sort of taking involuntary commitment with some safeguards, which is essentially if there is risk to safety, health, and society, then you can be involuntarily committed. And really speaking, what the mental health care bill is also trying to do is to balance the twin aspects. I'm not saying we've arrived at a very happy marriage in that balance, but I'm saying that it's a start, and I think we've gone much further along the way than we've ever been before. Does that answer the question?
What about the psychiatrist? Ours is a complex world, and I think there are some laws and regulations which work within a certain infrastructure. So, for instance, besides, of course, involuntary admissions and so on and so forth, and also as Roma pointed out, that this new bill is going to actually address every stakeholder's needs and perspectives. It is also proposing something called advanced directives to treatments, right? And when you talk about advanced directives, it means that a person who has fallen mentally ill, or even if you haven't, you can actually lay down certain things that will happen in case you did. So somebody with, let's say, a bipolar illness might decide that if I do fall ill again, then I can be taken only to this doctor. I will not be admitted. I will not take these medicines. ECT cannot be used against me, and so on and so forth. Yeah? Which means that there is not just the if in case this were to happen, it actually engages immediately various agencies. It engages the psychiatrist, it engages definitely a lawyer, because the lawyer has helped to, or somebody in that position, would have actually helped the person to make that document. It will engage in some way, or estrange the family, and it will perhaps engage various other agencies like the employer and so on and so forth. So when you do that, unless this infrastructure is in place, how do you implement it? I mean, in a let's say in a small town in Jharkhand, if somebody was to do an advanced directive and were to fall ill, where are these agencies who will, let's say, actually respond and do something effective and to the true spirit of that law? And those are the things that actually begin to interfere with becoming too liberal and perhaps westernized, where you believe that the infrastructure is there, and you also believe that at no point in time will the person lose judgment, for instance. One of the basic premises of severe psychiatric illness is that the ability to take reasonable, rational, safe decisions might get jeopardized. And if indeed that is the case, then are we not putting a lot of people at great risk if we take that provision away? Especially if there is no infrastructure to look after So if there were going to be a social services where social workers would go out and look after people who fall mentally ill, who you cannot bring into the system, to an institution of a treatment because you do not have that provision in the bill, and there needs to be another infrastructure that goes out and looks at them, keeps them safe through that period of illness. Yeah, and whichever way it takes the person naturally in that. So it has a lot of pitfalls in the system that we live in, and I think in different places, whether we call it the metropolises, a place like Delhi, will differ hugely. From even let's say Bhopal or Jhansi, where things were entirely different. So unless we are able to provide for this varied scenario that we're talking about, we can get into a lot of trouble, and that's why I think the provisions need to be there. The provision needs to be there, perhaps with riders.
No, actually, I have to add that I didn't really go into the implementation aspect because the implementation aspect is completely dismal. We have, in terms of professionals in this country, we are really low down on the scale. We have something like anywhere between 3,500 to 5,000 psychiatrists. We have something like about 800 to 1,100 clinical psychologists, and we have only 200 psychiatric nurses. So the service delivery system is completely messed up, and of course that was a huge problem because when we were looking at the bill, when we were proposing, when we were drafting, when we were actually working on it, the thing is that this question came up continuously that, you know, if you say this, how are you going to actually deliver this? And I have to say that one of the considerations and that ultimately kind of won the day was that this kind of a change and a paradigm shift in the law, we're not going to get a chance to do it repetitively. And if we don't do it now, we miss the bus for the next, so to say, 20 years. And therefore, let's put the cart before the horse. Let's get this in there, and then we will try and resolve already the other aspects of you know, how to deal with the rest of it.
On this note, I think that we have got one sound explanation as to when we put the cart before the horse. Perhaps mental health also goes through these squibbles. Looks like that we are passing kind of a ditch, and we suddenly feel like jumping into it. The fact that you were here was more or less like a ditch that you have all participated so well in the last how many hours? Almost close to 2 hours. How do we thank each other? I think our first dharma is to thank the panelists. And we often thank by applause. I don't want you to go right, please. I think many of you wanted to raise questions. So we are just going for a cup of tea together near the clinics, near Awaaz, which is the name that we have given to the space, where you must interact with them if they give you a welcoming thing, otherwise leave them with their tea and snack. But take their addresses. I think the important thing is to develop a relationship with this kind of process. We need them far more acutely. They need us also to sometimes look at these contradictions and make them into paradoxes and so on, sometimes find creative energies around. So our applause is more in the kind of a pledge that we must keep, that if we have some questions, concerns, interact with them. I would certainly like to take advantage of your presence and say, in the last 4 years, I think I haven't seen an involved mood state coming to the audience. So this must be a tribute to all 4 of you, me as a denominator. But thank you very much, all of us, and thank you very much that you came here. We'll invite you soon again. Thank you. We've all been for a cup of tea near